All right, guys, it's time again for that cover price top 10. We're going back 2 years. All right, guys, we are going to get into this top 10 list from 2 years ago, where the prices were then and where they are now. But first, if you could hit that subscription button, the notification bell, the thumbs up if you enjoy the video, leave a comment, let me know what you think about this list, and we're going to get into Cover Price. Let's talk about Covrprice.com right now. For today's comic book market trends, Covrprice.com offers the ultimate price guide with live, raw, and graded sales. Manage your collection, track your portfolio's overall value with our robust tracking system. With a free 10-day trial and several affordable price tiers, discover the value of your comics. Sign up today. This list is provided by Covrprice.com. Let's get right into it. Let's start out at number 10. This is the Sensational SheHulk number 1. This one's from 1989. If you recall, huge MCU news was provided during the 2019 D23 Expo. Miss Marvel, Kamala, Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, and Kit Harington as the Black Knight in the Eternals were all highlights from that announcement and had a heavy effect on Cover Price's top 10. For number 10, we start with She-Hulk. While She-Hulk's first appearance in Savage She-Hulk took off like a rocket, collectors also turned to the more affordable Sensational SheHulk number 1 from 1989, which featured the more modern She-Hulk that we know today. This was trending for about $10 raw, $140 and a 9.8. 2 years later, the market is still picking these up, giving raws a boost of $38, 9.8s now selling for $289. Guys, this whole list, we're going to talk about the D23 Expo. This is the first one. This is Sensational SheHulk number 1. This does come in a newsstand, does come in a direct copy, but we're going to talk about that earlier one. That's the one that people want. That's Savage SheHulk number 1. Let's get into number 9 now. This is Venom, first host number 3. 2 years ago, there was strong speculation that Dylan Brock was the sleeper symbiote who first appeared in this issue. This helped push raw copies to 20, 9.8s to $102. 2 years later, we now know that Dylan Brock was not the sleeper symbiote. However, the character did play heavily all the way through Donny Cates' Venom run. In fact, the character became a major ally for Eddie and Dylan against Null and is still around, hanging out with Dylan Brock, aka Venom. Today, this had a tiny bump of $24 raw, $152, 9.8. We're probably going to see a lot of this on this list, that the raws, little bumps, but those 9.8s, those graded sales on this list, you're going to see huge gaps between where they were 2 years ago and where they are now. We're just going to talk about the market 2 years ago and where it is now. Again, crazy jumps. We all know this. Going through COVID, everything seemed to skyrocket, and we're going to see that, especially the CGC stuff again. Let's move down to number 8 on the list. This is all new Marvel Now, Point One, number 1. 2 years ago, this full appearance of Kamala Khan was actually the cheapest key book for Kamala. It sold 53 copies, sold raw for $70, had a high sale of $440 and a 9.8. 2 years later, this is now recognized as Kamala's second most important book behind Captain Marvel 17, the second print. It now sells for a fair market value of $242 raw, 9.8s currently selling at $1,800, and this still has room to grow. Miss Marvel is coming to Disney Plus. This definitely has room to grow. I'm starting to notice that it seems like books pop initially, then they kind of level off, and then when we actually see these characters, when the masses get to see these characters, they get another pop. I call this the Agatha effect. We all knew Agatha Harkness was the villain by episode 4 of WandaVision, but once she actually was named and actually was shown as Agatha Harkness, the book went crazy. I have a feeling this is going to have that effect too. Big jumps on this book in 2 years, and like the guys over at Cover Price was saying, this has room to grow. Let's get down to number 7 now. This is Devil Dinosaur number 1. Upon the Moon Girl news 2 years ago, we were surprised to see that this was the book collectors went for over the more obvious Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur number 1. Regardless, the market picked up 44 copies of this first appearance of Devil Dinosaur, with raw copies selling for $30. High sale of $260 for a 9.8. 2 years later, the market appropriately pivoted favor back to Moon Girl number 1. However, this book has also done well. While raws are at break even, 9.8s now sell for $487. This is what I'm talking about. You're going to see the raw copies, the same slight boosts. It's those graded copies, the CGC graded copies. There's a premium now for this stuff, and you're looking at almost double from 2 years ago on this book. Again, we're going to see more and more and more and more of this going down the list. Moving down to number 6 now. This is Savage SheHulk number 1, newsstand. Very important here. SheHulk's first appearance was the book that received the most traction 2 years ago. Just this newsstand version alone sold 67 copies, with raws selling for $75, high sale of $600 for 9.8. 2 years later, this is a big book now. Raws are now selling for a fair market value of about $156. 9/8, $1,800. SheHulk was a long undervalued first that had a big market correction. And look at this again. Raws essentially doubled over the last 2 years. 9.8s tripled, going from $600 to $1,800. I just like beating a dead horse talking about these CGC graded books in a 9.8, the growth they've had compared to raws. It almost seems like people are like, all right, I can go buy the raw and then I have it, or I can just go buy this 9.8 and I know I have it. This is it. High grade, perfect, nothing else. It's better than buying a near mint raw, submitting it and getting a 9.6. Some people are just jumping to that 9.8 level, getting it done and not worrying about it. Moving down, we're talking about D23 from 2 years ago, and it's continuing right here. This is Moon Knight number 1. This is from 1980. Even 2 years ago, collectors couldn't just jump into the already pricey Werewolf by Night 32 and Marvel Spotlight 28. This first ongoing series was the far more price-friendly option. It sold 81 copies and had raw sales selling for $40, with a high sale of $275 for a CGC 9.8. 2 years later, this book has grown substantially. The raw fair market value is now around $90 plus. 9.8s currently selling for a fair market value of $838. Again, almost triple on the 9.8 compared to just over double of the raws. The numbers say that they speak volumes here. This is all sales data I'm giving you. This is all sales data from Covrprice. You're seeing the market. You're seeing what it wants to do. A 2 year, how about tripling your money on a 2 year investment? That's not too shabby, I got to say. Let's go down. We're going down now to number 4. This is Avengers 47. We were just kind of talking about this. There are multiple key Black Knight books. However, when Kit Harington was announced to play the character in the Eternals, this first Black Knight cameo was the book that had the most traction. It sold 59 copies, with raws selling for $150, high sale of $910 for 9.8. 2 years later, while the raws are still at break even, 9.8s went nuclear. The last 9.8 sold for a massive $5,500 back in March of 2021. Of all the books on this list, that definitely had the biggest growth. Look, every book, are you catching the trend here? Every single book, raw copies, about the same, maybe a little growth. 9.8s, we went from $900 to over $5,000. Now, granted, we're talking about a Silver Age major key here. So getting a 9.8 in that book is extremely difficult. It does have that white cover. Extremely difficult. But you're talking over 5 times getting your money back, again, on a 2 year investment. Absolutely insane. Let's go down to number 3. This is Savage SheHulk number 1. This is the direct copy. The She-Hulk news was so hot that both the direct and newsstand editions landed on the list. However, the direct edition moved a whopping 147 copies, with raw selling for a fair market value of $75 and had a high sale of $600 in a 9.8. 2 years later, Raws now sell for $150. 9/8 are at $1,700. This could even get a boost when we finally see Tatiana Maslany as She-Hulk. If you guys only watch so much of this video, you're going to see the same thing. Raws doubled while 9/8 nearly tripled. There's a reason CGC is so backed up. People see this and they want a piece of the pie. Let's go down to number 2. This is going to continue now. This is Venom First Host number 3. This is the second print. As mentioned, speculation around Dylan Brock as the sleeper symbiote lit a fire under this second print. Nuts. It sold 51 copies, with Raws selling for about $75, had a high sale of $200 for a CGC 9.8. 2 years later, while Raws are at a break even, 9.8s now sell for $522. As noted, Sleeper is now a big ally to Dylan, and we should continue to see him for the near future. Again, another book where the Raws remained the same, maximum doubled in value, but this one stayed the same. And CGC 9.8s doubled or more. This is, what did this do? It doubled and went 150% growth on this one. So, wow. Just wow. Number 1 on our list is going to catch people off guard, but I did want to remind everyone that this list comes from Covrprice.com. It's based on actual sales data from 2 years ago and compared to today. So here we go. Number 1 on our list. Nobody saw this one coming unless you knew about it from 2 years ago. Batman number 77. The number 1 spot was a bit of a curveball for the list. Amidst all this content traction, DC killed Alfred in this issue 2 years ago. It sold a massive, ready for this? 274 copies in just 5 days, with a 7-day trend of 414%, and had a high raw sale of $30, with 9.8s getting about 150. 2 years later, Alfred is still dead, though he did return as a resurrected villain called the Outsider for about a minute or so. Though comic deaths tend to be poor investments since they don't tend to stick, collectors know this. Hence the reason Raws now sell for $10. 9/8s fell to $55. So this is it's like, we talked about it on our last cover price video. It's very dangerous and very risky to bet on these brand new weekly spec books. And I don't even know if you would call this a speculation book or just a book people want in their collection. The death of Alfred, kind of a big deal. But like we just said, deaths usually don't stick. Alfred, as important and as great as a character he is, it's not the death of Superman. It's not the death of Batman. It's not the death of Spider-Man. It's Alfred, you know? You thought he would have died about 30 or 40 years ago, but here we are. He's been old for that long. So that's our list. Let's close this thing out and give you some final numbers. The top 10 books from 2 years ago tell a much different story than the last show from 1 year ago that was packed with a story-driven busts. However, this list was driven by mostly content that turned hot books in 2019 to modern day keys today. If you would have bought all these books back in 2019, they would have cost you $575 raw, $3,677 graded. 2 years later, these books are now worth $969 raw, $12,994 graded, profiting $394 on the raw side. Huge gains on the graded, $9,317. The biggest graded gains yet on any of the lists we've done. Make sure you check out Covrprice.com and see what their current top 10 and their various trending movers and shakers. Come back next show and let's see how these books did. We're going back 1 year later. Thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, keep it comics.